Hi, welcome to Reality Check. I'm Wang Guan. In China's annual political meetings known as the Two Sessions, Beijing sets social, economic, and security policy priorities in a government work report. So, what is in it this year, and where is the world's second largest economy headed? We will be talking to experts, but first, some highlights of this annual report. For the first time ever, China has set no GDP growth target. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang cited the global pandemic and trade and economic uncertainties as the reasons why Beijing did not set a target. In fact, China has stopped setting rigid numerical targets for quite some time. In 2016 through 2019, it made its GDP growth objectives a range instead of a fixed figure. But this year, COVID-19 complicated things. China took drastic measures in locking down cities and shutting down its economy to contain the spread of the virus. Here's what the Chinese premier said on the trade-off between growing the economy and saving lives.
我们也付出巨大代价，一季度经济出现负增长，生产生活秩序受到冲击，但生命至上，这是必须承受，也是值得付出的代价。
But there is a target for jobs, which Beijing says is its top priority right now. Over 9 million. That is the number of new urban jobs to be created for 2020. Now, to make that happen, Beijing says it will rely heavily on a more proactive fiscal policy. Government spending will go up by 1 trillion yuan, increasing the deficit to GDP ratio to 3.6%, the highest in decades. On top of that, a special 1 trillion yuan treasury bond will be issued. The funding will go directly to counties and cities coping with the economic fallout from the coronavirus. Now, meanwhile, there will also be a 500 billion yuan tax cut and fee cut, primarily targeting small and medium-sized enterprises. Now, where does all this money come from? Beijing says it has ordered all levels of governments to slash non-essential spending, such as on new office buildings, by as much as 50%. Now, for foreign investors, Beijing says there will be a much shorter negative list, making more Chinese sectors open for foreign investment. Meanwhile, a negative list will also be drawn up for cross-border trading in services. Another number grabbing headlines is China's defense budget. It is growing, but at a slower rate since 2014. In fact, the 6.6% increase this year is the slowest increase in nearly 2 decades. Compare China's defense budget of $178 billion to America's 2019 defense budget of $680 billion. So, how to understand the goals and priorities set out by this year's government work report? I'm joined by Yao Yang, professor from Peking University. Your thoughts on the fact that there has been no GDP target set for this year?
Yeah, that was a kind of a surprise, right? Everyone expected there should be a GDP growth target. Usually the government report did that, but this year there was none. I think there were several reasons. One reason was actually spoken out by Premier Li Keqiang himself. He said it was because there are many uncertainties in this year. I think the government also wanted to leave some room to implement other important policies. I think there are two such policies. One is to make sure that those unemployed people, low-income people, can be helped by the government. That needs money, right? So the government can set aside some money to help those really poor people instead of boosting the economy. The second consideration probably is also the government's plan to eradicate absolute poverty by the end of this year, right? So that was the goal set by President Xi Jinping, and this year China needs to fulfill that goal. That also needs resources. Without a growth target, then the government can spend more money to fulfill those two goals.
So what messages should foreign companies pick up in terms of China's further opening up from this government work report?
In this year's work report, there is an exciting message that I hope foreign companies can get. That is, China is going to drastically shorten the negative list, including in the services sector. We all know the services sector is highly regulated, not just in China, but in other countries, right? The services sector probably the last sector for China to open up, right? So if China really shorten the negative list in that sector, then foreign companies in the services sectors can come into China, and that's going to help foreign companies, but also help Chinese companies. We know there is quite a large gap between China's service companies' productivity and then the productivity of service companies, say in the United States. So that's going to be mutually helpful.
Professor Yao, thank you so much for your time. Another issue in focus is a draft bill on Hong Kong. For that, we turn to Wang Yao, President at Center for China and Globalization. Talking about Hong Kong, a draft bill on Hong Kong regarding China's national security has been deliberated and potentially passed. Again, some Western media said that this means the death of Hong Kong's rule of law institutions. Do you agree?
So it's unfortunate to see that maybe a small group of people in Hong Kong wants to seek independence of Hong Kong, which is I think it's really ridiculous because nobody has ever said Hong Kong is not a part of China. So this is really not making sense. But also, since Hong Kong and China are so intertwined, and the Great Bay Area is really the great future hope for Hong Kong, and also the Hong Kong young people can really have the opportunity in the Great Bay Area to settle there, to start a business, to buy apartment, or to even build up a family there. I see a great integration there. So somehow the chaotic and riots in Hong Kong cannot continue. So somehow the government has to do something, and also Parliament has to really pass some resolution. Here's the red line. You cannot pass it. Here is the national unity. And here is the livelihood and also economic life and death of Hong Kong that we have to maintain. We have to put the 7 million of Hong Kong people's interests in mind. We cannot jeopardize Hong Kong. We cannot kill the golden goose that lay the golden egg. So I think I think the new policy coming on Hong Kong is really for the interest of Hong Kong, for the benefit of Hong Kong, and for the prosperity of Hong Kong, and for the peace and stability of Hong Kong. So I think if that is stabilized, we will see tourists flood back to Hong Kong. We will see spending continue to Hong Kong. We see Hong Kong become the most important bridges connecting China and the outside world. So I'm very really care about Hong Kong, and I think all the parts of from mainland are in Hong Kong to want to see the continuous prosperity and also the stability in Hong Kong.
That will do it for this edition of Reality Check. For more, log on to cgtn.com or to your favorite social media platform and search for Reality Check with me, Wang Guan. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.